At the beginning of the show, the Walter Game Design Competition takes center stage, where developers from all over China are competing for the best game trophy. Guxun and his team are super confident that their design is the best. Our female lead, Ling, is one of the testers for the listed games. She goes by the online handle Sticky Dough Twist and is a pro gamer who is second to none. Guxun and Ling are online gaming buddies using the pseudonyms Campus Hunk and Sticky Dough Twist respectively. They've known each other for years, but only using each other's pseudonyms, meaning they're unaware of each other's true identities. In real life, they're actually college classmates and work colleagues. Furthermore, Ling has a massive crush on Guxun and has always wanted to confess her feelings for him, but she's unaware that her best online buddy, Campus Hunk, is none other than Guxun. At the end of the competition, Guxun's team emerges victorious in the competition, and Ling is genuinely happy for him. When our hero learns that the handle Sticky Dough Twist won his game, he eagerly tries to find out who it is, but he narrowly misses Ling as she is dragged away by her dorm partner to attend class. After their team wins the competition, Guxun decides not to claim the reward because he's determined to focus on creating top-notch games with a Chinese company. The following day, Ling, a designer at HC Games, resigns from her position to prioritize her studies. Despite HR's efforts to persuade her to stay, a developer from the 9th Business Unit also resigns. It's revealed that the team, backed personally by HC's boss, is dedicated to crafting cutting-edge triple-star games for the next generation. In the next scene, HR announces that there is someone new who'll be replacing the resigning employee. This is when Guxun steps in and reveals himself to be the new developer for the 9th Business Unit. When Ling realizes that her crush is joining the company, she instantly regrets quitting her job. She then tries to talk to Guxun, but he ignores her completely. She then decides to talk to HR to stop her resignation process, but sadly, just as she's about to speak with the manager, her resignation is unexpectedly processed. In a flashback to 2 years ago, we see some students playing a shooter game. Ling competes fiercely with Guxun, going toe-to-toe with him as they eliminate the rest of their classmates. However, our hero ultimately emerges victorious by defeating her character. During the game, Ling finds herself instantly drawn to him, but her tactics put Guxun off. He tells her that he disliked the fact that she played dirty by shooting her own friends to gain points in the game. In the present, HC's board expresses dissatisfaction with the 9th Business Unit due to its lengthy development cycles. During the meeting, Guxun faces the daunting task of presenting a proposal for his game application at the upcoming pitch meeting, where only one game will be approved. If he fails to secure their approval, he will be forced to resign. His senior, Mr. Jiang, who boasts a perfect success rate, will also be pitching his game at the same meeting. Mr. Jiang is also the manager of Business Unit 1, where Ling used to work. In the meantime, Ling arrives at her local arcade, only to witness a handle named Wait, shattering her 3-year winning streak. Challenged, she quickly logs into the game and uses her supreme skills to regain top position. Just then, she spots Guxun there and tries to approach him, but he brushes her off yet again. Returning to her dorm and logging in, she finds Campus Hunk and her fellow gaming teammates bombarding her with messages. As they engage in a shooter game, it becomes apparent that Guxun, going by the handle of Campus Hunk, harbors feelings for Sticky Dough Twist without realizing her true identity. Amid their playful banter, he even misguides her on how to win over a boy. He is unaware that she's talking about her own experience of being ignored by her crush, Guxun. The scene then shifts to a flashback showing Guxun stumbling into a one-sided online romance. At first, he didn't want to play with anyone he didn't know, but then he and his mysterious partner, who he didn't even know was Ling, ended up on the same team together. Despite his initial arrogance, she won him over, and they began to bond. Back in the present, Guxun continues to ignore Ling at the university, keeps on texting Sticky Dough Twist. As the richer relationship progresses, they agree to exchange photos, but then they get cold feet and end up sharing memes instead. Meanwhile, a former colleague named Huang Ji informs Lin that she left a pair of gloves at the company. She sees this as the perfect opportunity to meet her crush, so she responds that she will be there tomorrow. The next morning, she dresses up elegantly to impress Guxun and rushes to the company. Luckily, she runs into him in the elevator. She initiates a greeting, but he again ignores her. Ling then thinks of other ways to gain his attention. She strategically lets her hair get caught in the elevator door and pretends to be scared. This plan works, and Guxun immediately comes to her rescue. Excited by his kind nature, Ling decides to try her best to return to the company. However, when she reaches HR office, she learns that the company has a policy against rehiring former employees. HR tries to advocate to her former boss, but the boss doesn't take it seriously since Ling is just an intern designer. Our heroine sadly returns to her dorm and starts to prepare her lion dance practice, which is a prerequisite for graduation. But suddenly she realizes that she has to act now to win over Gushun's gang. Therefore, Ling begins to submit resumes to her former company. When HR unexpectedly offers her a job with a higher salary, she accepts in a heartbeat. Turns out the company is short-staffed due to upcoming holidays. After returning to the company, Ling diligently works all day to design the New Year's card, even after everyone's left. However, her department boss, Mr. Jiang, isn't satisfied and criticizes her for lacking attention to detail. Determined to improve, Ling seeks advice from her online gaming buddies and learns that boys like feeding stray animals instead of going out for the holidays. Inspired by this, she adds a cute cat to her main character in the card. Outside the company, Ling sees an adorable dog and playfully teases it. Seeing Gushun nearby, she pretends to be afraid of the dog. Our hero reacts swiftly and protects both her and the dog from each other. The scene then cuts to the HD Games building, where Junan, a colleague and a friend of Gushun, discovers that Wei Han from another department is the artist Gushun has been searching for. Wei Han is a successful animator who has won many awards for his exceptional art. Gushun is aware that Wei Han is closely connected to his senior rival, Mr. Jiang, and that recruiting him will be difficult. Despite this, our hero decides to interview him. Even though Wei Han is hesitant about developing the Triple Star game, Gushun proposes an unusual challenge. If his project succeeds, he offers him a lucrative position in the 9th Business Unit. Unable to resist the opportunity, Wei Han agrees to the offer. Later, while playing the online game, our hero learns that Sticky-Do Twist doesn't go out on weekends. This makes him speculate that she may not have a boyfriend, making him very happy. Junan notices his friend's behavior and realizes that he's developed feelings for Sticky-Do Twist. Later at the bar, Junan sends Gunshu a WeChat message about a concept to introduce their game project. Just then, he notices Mr. Jiang's right-hand man there. Although he intends to invite him for a drink, the man leaves hastily. Moments later, Gushun arrives at the scene and notices the man. He suspects that Mr. Jiang might be trying to steal the concept they conceived. The following day during a project pitch, Mr. Jiang has indeed stolen their ideas and is presenting them. However, our hero surprises everyone by unveiling an upgraded version of the concept. His version allows not only interaction with the players, but also with scenes to create remote linkages. The board members are blown away by this concept, and they immediately approve it. Following the project approval, Wei Han, the lead artist, transfers Gushun's unit as agreed. Meanwhile, Mr. Jiang, who has lost a potential investment, becomes increasingly resentful towards our hero. In the evening, while Ling and her colleagues are dining at a restaurant, they unexpectedly bump into Gushun and Junan. They then sit down together with Gushun sitting next to Ling. During the meal, she attempts to appear polite so that she can impress her crush. She claims that she's allergic to alcohol and only drinks juice. Gushun then talks about online games with her, assuming that she enjoys playing solo shooter games. However, Ling surprises him by stating that she prefers cute pet games. She lies to him, believing that he wouldn't like girls who play violent survival games where they have to harm other characters. After dinner, she follows Gushun outside, hoping for a ride back to the school dormitory. He initially hesitates, but eventually agrees to take her since the last subway train has already left. Once again, our heroine tries to impress him by striking up a conversation during the car ride, but sadly, he bluntly tells her to be quiet. The next day, one of Gushun's online buddies, Lee, arrives in the city for New Year's celebration. The two meet up for lunch, and they talk about their personal lives. Lee suggests that he meet up with Sticky-Do Twist in person and express his feelings for her. However, our hero believes that the right time has yet to come. Later that evening, Ling and Gushun find themselves watching the fireworks outside on New Year's Eve. Both secretly want to spend New Year's Eve together, but fail to notice each other in the crowd. The following day, Gushun, who typically dislikes coriander, notices Sticky-Do Twist sharing a delicious food that includes coriander in the group chat. Curious, he tries the dish at a noodle shop. When Junan notices him doing so, he becomes convinced that love can cure anything. At the same time, Ling and her roommate Ying Shu are passing by the same shop. She suddenly spots Gushun eating coriander there. Yin-Chu encourages her to grab this opportunity and exchange WeChat contacts with him. However, our heroine doesn't feel confident approaching him, especially considering she can't even practice lion dance with him. Meanwhile, as Gushun starts to leave, a school card falls at Ling's feet. Ying-Shu once again encourages her to seize the opportunity and return the card and casually add him on WeChat. This time she takes her friend's advice and follows Gushun. However, when she finally catches up to him and initiates adding him on WeChat, he gets distracted by a phone call about a courier delivery. This leaves our poor heroine feeling embarrassed. Just then, a classmate arrives at the scene and claims that the school card is actually his. Seeing how beautiful she is, he promptly asks for her WeChat, but seconds later, he mistakes her for Gushun's girlfriend and leaves her alone. Ling smiles at the incident and appears to be happy, but Gushun doesn't want to be misunderstood, so he declares that Ling is actually Junan's new girlfriend. This action surprises her, and Junan is also dismayed by it. Feeling embarrassed by the turn of events, she returns to the noodle shop and resorts to chopping coriander furiously to vent her emotions. Later at work, a new lead artist becomes critical in Ling's new artistic style. Recently, our heroine has been experimenting with Chinese-style art. Despite facing setbacks at work, the artwork she shares online is receiving significant attention. One day, Ling encounters Wei Han on her way to the office, who informs her about the 9th Business Department's current recruitment drive. They're hiring talented designers for their project. Wei Han believes in her artistic skills and wants her to apply to his unit so that she can pursue her creative endeavors. Ling is encouraged by his optimism and instantly agrees to sign up for the vacant position. She's even more excited to work with Gushun, the head of the 9th Business Unit. Following their encounter, Wei Han promptly sends detailed requirements to Ling's email. He sets a deadline for her to submit her manuscript 3 days later by 8 a.m. Our heroine takes this opportunity seriously and immerses herself in her artwork. Sadly, despite her best efforts, she misses the deadline due to network issues. She then hastily rushes to Gushun's office to transfer the file via USB drive. But as far as he's concerned, she missed the deadline, and he refuses to listen to her explanation, criticizes her for not coming through. Later, Wei Han confirms that the network indeed experienced disruptions in the morning. He also suspects foul play and believes that someone is trying to sabotage Ling. Gushun acknowledges her talent but reveals that HR has already approved another candidate on his request. Now, the decision can't be altered. Later, he meets up with Ling and apologizes to her, praising her artwork. This makes her feel somewhat better. One day, she excitedly brings over lunch for Gushun, but to her dismay, she notices another girl offering him food. Gushun declines the girl's offer, mentioning that he already has a girlfriend. Hearing this, our poor heroine is left feeling disheartened. She returns to her dormitory and breaks down in tears. Yin-Shu tries to comfort her, but Ling feels like it's the end of the world right now. To distract herself, she starts working excessively day and night. The scene then cuts to a team-building event where Ling and Junan find themselves seated together. During this time, he reveals that Gushun doesn't actually have a girlfriend. He explains that Gushun's previous claims were just attacked to ward off unwanted attention from girls. Ling is beyond ecstatic at this revelation, and she can't help but smile. Junanan then discreetly informs her that Gushun will wear a golden mask at a masquerade ball tonight. Later at the party, she eagerly anticipates meeting him and keeps her eyes fixed on a man wearing a golden mask. Luckily, she and the man with the golden mask win the best couple dance. They're then called upon stage to receive their trophies, but Ling's hopes are dashed when the man removes his mask. Turns out he's not Gushun, but a different person. The couple is then asked to kiss for 30 seconds. Uncomfortable with such intimacy, Ling asks the host to skip the kissing part. However, the latter thinks it's an important tradition and suggests at least a nose-to-nose kiss. While the man is eager to participate, Ling feels uneasy and repeatedly backs away. Much to her surprise, Gushun steps in and takes her place in the nose-to-nose kiss. This impresses our heroine, and her admiration for him grows even more. After the event, her colleague Huang Ji brings over hangover drinks and complains to Ling that everyone in the 9th unit is already having fun and drinking excessively. Hearing this, Ling grabs a drink and goes in search of Gushun. She soon bumps into him and one of his colleagues outside. The heavily drunk colleague tries to express his feelings for Ling, but Gushun pushes him away. He then approaches her, causing her heart to race. But just as he's about to say something, he collapses due to his drunken state. Seeing him defenseless on the ground, Ling feels the urge to kiss him, but restrains herself. She realizes that it would be inappropriate to take advantage of someone while they're completely wasted. Instead, she helps Gushun back to his room. The next day when he wakes up, he learns from his friend that Ling brought him back. However, he has no memory of the incident. Meanwhile, Ling plays online games with her school buddies and reveals that she's just becoming somewhat close to her crush. Encouraged by her friend, our heroine gathers the courage to confess her feelings to Gushun on graduation day. Fast forward to graduation, Ling approaches him and expresses her deep feelings, but he rejects her outrightly. He bluntly states that she's not his type. Embarrassed and hurt by his words, Ling leaves the building only to get caught in the pouring rain. She goes back to her dorm room heavily soaked and sadly looks at a picture of Gushun. Ling then seeks solace in gaming, where she vents her frustration. She explains to her buddies, including Campus Hunk, that she was rejected by her crush today. After hearing all the details of the failed confession, Gushun finally realizes that Sticky Dough Twist is actually Ling. He regrets his response, wishing he could redo the moment. Ling soon turns her heartache into motivation and resolves to work hard and aim for promotion. She even volunteers to take on additional project work, surprising her colleagues. Later, she encounters Gushun at the elevator. However, without giving him a chance to explain, she declares that they'll go their separate ways from now on and avoid each other. Our hero feels helpless, and he doesn't have the courage to stop her. The following day, Ling moves into a new apartment to start anew. Much to her surprise, Gushun has also moved to the same floor. As they coincidentally become neighbors, our heroine is dismayed because she's been trying to distance herself from him. Gushun then attempts to mend the relationship by offering to fix her broken air conditioner remote. Ling reluctantly lets him in and allows him to do his work. After a while, Gushun fixes the remote and considers revealing his identity as Campus Hunk, but fails to do so as Ling keeps ignoring him. The next day, he invites her to join the 9th Business Unit, but she promptly refuses. Despite his efforts to persuade her, Ling remains firm in her decision. Disappointed, Gushun initially leaves, but then returns from another direction to continue his persuasion. He emphasizes their shared interest in gaming and his confidence in her abilities. Though she rejects the offer straightforwardly, deep down, she still longs to join the 9th Business Unit. Later at home, she receives a large courier and tries to pick it up. Gushun arrives at the scene and offers to help, but she insists on managing it herself. However, she struggles to carry the bulky package and nearly gets into an accident. Gushun then steps in to guide her, and she reluctantly accepts his help. They walk to the back door, where Ling reveals she bought a doghouse for strays. Impressed by her kind nature, Gushun decides to assemble it. He hastily retrieves a toolbox and begins the task. It soon starts raining, but our hero is adamant on finishing the work. Touched by his determination, Ling offers to share her umbrella with him. She tries to act cool by telling him not to stare at her, but deep down she finds herself looking at him affectionately. As they start to get along better, Gushun asks her to join the 9th Business Unit once more. But she leaves early, leaving the word dream on the umbrella, which makes Gushun smile. One day, Ling is upset after losing her takeaway. Our hero assists her by reviewing the surveillance footage, only to realize that he's the one who mistakenly took the food. Turns out that Ling wanted to collect the China dolls that came with the takeaway. So she insists that he make amends by rummaging through the trash and collecting a full set of the dolls to compensate her. Gushun agrees, but he continues to persuade her to join the 9th Business Unit. Surprisingly, Ling agrees to do so if he delivers the rare set of dolls. The following day at the office, Ling is seen admiring her new dolls. She then goes to her boss, Mr. Jiang's office, and pleads to be transferred to the 9th Business Unit. At first he tries to refuse, but eventually agrees on the condition that she completes her draft works. Our heroine is ecstatic by the approval, and she excitedly rushes to report to Gushun. However, on her way, she sees him logging into the shooter game in the common room. She notices him playing through his official game account, Campus Hunk. However, Gushun quickly avoids being seen by gently pushing her against the wall. As a result, Ling is caught off guard, and her heart starts to race. They quickly separate when Junan enters the office and clears the air. As the days pass by, the company starts facing financial constraints. So, projects led by Mr. Jiang and Gushun must participate in an evaluation meeting to determine fund allocation. During the meeting, Fan Sing, the project lead for the 9th Business Unit, decides to test Ling's character concept on the spot. Our heroine nervously explains the details of her character. However, Fan Sing is dissatisfied, and she privately advises her to consult the unit designer for game background and character settings. Ling listens to her senior's advice with an open mind and declares that she's ready to take responsibility or quit if she can't finish the work. Sadly, her character design for the upcoming project receives harsh criticism from Fan Sing once more. Gushun is also dissatisfied and only rates 40 points. Later, as Ling returns home with a faint heart, flower petals are thrown onto her from the balcony. The gesture quickly lifts her spirits. Unbeknownst to her, Gushun is secretly trying to motivate her and make her feel better. The following night, he becomes worried about Ling when she doesn't arrive home at her usual time. He waits downstairs till 3 in the morning, using the excuse of a late-night run. When she finally returns, he overhears her conversation about lacking inspiration for overtime work. He then suggests a book to help her with her work. Intrigued, Ling decides to seek out the recommended book. She soon arrives at a bookstore where she searches for the rare book. However, when she finds it, Gu Xun suddenly appears and takes it away. He also gathers all the books, which frustrates her even more. Ling angrily asks why he's doing this, and in response, Gu Xun proposes a deal. He'll give her all the books if she drives them to their apartment building. Reluctantly, she complies, and the two reach their building together. The following day at work, the lead designer notices issues with Ling's weapon drawings. He suggests she attend Professor Wang Linji's lecture on cold weapons. Sadly, securing a ticket for the world-renowned professor's class is very difficult. Gu Xun, who previously declined Wang Linji's offers to take the grad school exam, now shamelessly asks for tickets for himself on her behalf. He somehow manages to get it, but a colleague named Su Jiang, who has a crush on Ling, offers to attend the class with her. The scene then shifts to the lecture, where our heroine is surprised to find herself in a good seat, thanks to Su Jiang. She expresses her gratitude to him, unaware that Gu Xun arranged the seat for her. After the lecture, it suddenly starts to rain. Our hero offers to take Ling home, but Su Jiang also offers a ride. She ends up choosing the latter, leaving Gu Xun feeling helpless and sad. To ease his frustration, he gives Su Jiang a lot of work that night. Later, Ling falls ill and orders medicine online, but it's delayed due to delivery issues. She mentions this to Campus Hunk in a private message. Worried, Gu Xun rushes out in the rain and somehow manages to get the medicine. But on the way back, he crosses paths with Ling in the corridor. When she asks what he has in his hands, he hugs her nervously. This embarrasses our heroine, and she rushes back inside her apartment. Shortly after, Gu Xun returns to her place to borrow a hairdryer and reveals that he bought some medicine and invites her to pick it up from his apartment. Ling innocently agrees and follows him. There, she discovers the lecture tickets and also realizes that the medicine was recently purchased. She then recalls her message to Campus Hunk talking about having a fever and suspects Gu Xun is actually him. However, she brushes off her suspicions and leaves without asking anything. The scene then cuts to the annual company meeting, where Ling is wearing a beautiful dress. The special effects manager from an outsourcing company is also present at the event. He takes several photos with Ling, completely ignoring the fact that he's making her uncomfortable. When our hero sees the photo, he senses the manager's ill intentions. He then calls Junan in to learn about the manager's background. After discovering that his wife is pregnant and he's been misbehaving with women, Gu Xun decides to inform the wife about the situation. In the meantime, a drunk Ling heads to the bathroom. The manager tries to take advantage of her, but Gu Xun arrives just in time and punches him. The manager's wife also arrives there and starts scolding him publicly. Gu Xun then calls the police and has the man arrested for his inappropriate behavior. Later, Ling's suspicions turn out to be true when she confirms that Gu Xun is actually the campus hunk. She feels betrayed upon discovering that he has confessed his true identity to Junanin and other gaming buddies, but not to her. Just then, a courier mistakenly arrives at her apartment, which contains some books Gu Xun had ordered. She then tears them up and throws them violently at his door. Our hero hears her cursing next door, making him shrink in fear, yet he remains determined to find a way to mend things with her. The following day at work, he tries to make coffee for Ling, but she angrily opts for cold drinks. She even asks him to keep his distance. Undeterred, Gu Xun places sandwiches into her basket, but she coldly refuses them. When he discovers that Ling plans to go to the library with Su Jiang, he messages her, claiming that they have an issue with their neighborhood street dogs. This worries Ling, and she hastily rushes back only to find the dogs are perfectly fine. Pissed that he lied to her, she scolds him before returning home. In the next scene, Ling learns that Chen, one of her colleagues, is struggling to find a new apartment, so she decides to help by allowing her to stay at her place for a while. Unaware of this, Gu Xun goes to deliver the milk tea he has waited over 2 hours to buy. However, he's unexpectedly greeted by Chen at the door. When Ling appears from behind, he gives her the tea under the pretext of a buy one get one free offer. He also hands over a USB flash drive, which contains celebrity portrait collaboration. Later, when our heroine checks it, she learns that it requires a password. She then calls Gu Xun, but he dodges the question and instead asks if she's still mad at him. Frustrated, she decides to figure out the password herself. After deciphering it, she learns that it's the word forgiveness. She quickly retrieves the information from the drive and sends it to him. Our hero then tries forgiveness as the password to log in, but it doesn't work. Turns out she changed the password to get back at him. In the meantime, Ling's messy house is driving Chen bonkers. While tidying up, she finds a sketch of Gu Xun hidden in the wardrobe. She then suspects that something is going on between them and smiles to herself. The next morning, Junon calls Gushu to inform him about the changes in their Pingyu collaboration project for their Hero's Path gaming concept. Gushun quickly packs up and asks Ling to go on a business trip with him to Beijing. She's initially hesitant but quickly agrees when she learns that they might lose a collaboration contract. She assumes they won't sit together in the plane's cabin, but unbeknownst to her, Chen has secretly upgraded her to business class. In the meantime, Mr. Jian believes that having Pingyu the ambassador endorse their games will bring positive results, so he decides to approach her for the project and secure the collaboration before Gushun can. Elsewhere, Ling discovers that Pingyu works as a bartender at night. They soon arrive in Beijing and approach her, but she appears to be busy. She also reveals that Mr. Jiang has already approached her with better terms. Gushun requests an official meeting, but she says she's running late for her Tai Chi practice. Desperate for her assistance, our hero accompanies her there. In the next scene, Gushun cooperates with Pingyu and impresses her with his rhythm. When he discovers her interest in shooter games, he teams up with her to win a match. This earns him the opportunity to introduce their project in detail. Pingyu is eventually impressed by his game, so she decides to change her mind and accepts his proposal. Hearing this, Ling excitedly hugs Gushun before quickly pulling away. The next day, he invites her to play a real-life shooter game together. He assists her during the game by pushing the opponents out to help her score. However, Ling gives him a cold look, reminding him of the incident in the game where he called her selfish. Later, Gushun organizes a celebration party for the 9th Business Unit after securing the project collaboration. Though Ling enjoys the atmosphere, she hasn't fully considered herself part of the team yet. Just then, Mr. Jiang arrives at the scene and questions Ling about her work angrily. This understandably ignites a quarrel between him and Gushun. Our hero surprises everyone by not holding back against Mr. Jiang, despite his usual easygoing nature. Their argument almost escalates into a fight, prompting everyone to separate them. Junon then reveals what happened between them during their college days, and the show goes into a flashback. As sophomores, Gushun and Mr. Jiang formed a winning team, but their partnership soured during their time at HC Games. While Mr. Jiang wanted Gushun to continue working with him, the latter disagreed, leading to a major disagreement between them. The two now decide to settle their dispute over a game of darts. Our hero then impresses the crowd with his skills, while Mr. Jiang's loss leaves him feeling defeated once more. By the end of the night, Gushun is heavily drunk and sloppy, so Ling brings him to the car and drives him home. She feels an impulse to kiss him, but he wakes up just in time. This completely catches her off guard and she pretends to help him with his seatbelt, but he sees right through it. Later, Ling's mother unexpectedly visits her, catching the two together. But instead of asking several questions, she warmly greets Gushun and appears to be impressed by his handsome appearance. Our hero uses this opportunity to make a good impression on Mom. She instantly likes him and even tries to set them up, making him very happy. However, Ling isn't pleased and attempts to find ways to keep him away from her mother. The following day, while returning home from shopping, she notices someone following her. She quickly seeks refuge in Gushun's apartment and hugs him tightly out of fear. He comforts her and tries to help by checking the surveillance footage. However, it turns out that the cameras aren't working at the moment. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Gushun accompanies Ling to report the incident to the police. Seeing them together, the officer mistakes them for a couple and chastises them for not ensuring Ling's safety after work. Our hero accepts the blame and promises to take good care of his girlfriend from now on. When they return to their apartment building, he leaves some of his clothes at her place so that a stalker will think that she's not living alone. This kind gesture touches her deeply. The following morning, Ling prepares to head for work when her childhood friend, Tong, suddenly shows up in front of the apartment building. He offers to accompany her and invites her to a friend's wedding as his date. Gushun also arrives at the scene and overhears their conversation. He pretends to be Ling's boyfriend and insists on taking her to work himself. He also introduces himself as her supervisor, but Tong insinuates that Gushun only became her boyfriend through unfair means. Upon arriving at the company, Ling receives a call from Tong, who informs her that he's ordered clothes for her for the wedding. Although she hesitates, he sends them directly to the company. Her work bestie, Huang Ji, guesses that Tong must like Ling. Our heroine then decides to clarify her feelings and arranges to meet him at a restaurant during lunch. When Gushun notices her absence, he also rushes to the restaurant. During lunch, our heroine frets over how to turn down Tong, so she and Gushun put on a convincing act as a couple deeply in love. When Ling steps out to answer a call, Gushun quickly transfers the money for the clothes to Tong. He also deliberately spills food on them to make an excuse for leaving. After this, he grabs Ling's hand and hurries her away, leaving Tong seething behind them. Later that night, Ling struggles with a power outage at home and calls Gushun for assistance. Unfortunately, he's busy restoring the building's monitoring system and misses her call. Tong happens to show up at the same time and lends Ling a hand in resolving the issue. When Gushun arrives with the technician, he and Tong playfully argue about who should pay for the service. Our hero insists that he should do so as Ling's boyfriend. Observing the two in an awkward interaction, Tong believes that they're just pretending to be a couple and tells him to drop the act. However, Gu Xun reveals that he genuinely likes her and he believes that they will only grow stronger over time. After Tong leaves, Gu Xun notices a suspicious security guard in their community. He believes that the guard is the one who's been stalking Ling. He then devises a plan to dupe him into thinking they're going on a trip. The following day, the two pretend to be away and the guard takes the bait. But as soon as he sneaks into her apartment, he's caught. The scene then shifts to the police station where the officer is impressed by Gu Xun's swift handling of the situation. He jokingly asks if his girlfriend won't break up with him. This makes Ling blush a bit and she fails to come up with a response. While driving back home, her mother calls Gu Xun. Ling is shocked to see that he has saved her number as mother-in-law. Mom informs them that she found a photo from her high school days where she and Gu Xun's mother appear together. She then asks for his mother's cell phone number, which he happily provides. The following day at work, Ling is facing a dilemma to either fully transfer to the 9th Department and achieve her dream of becoming a star designer, or continue working on a task basis with Unit 1 under Mr. Jiang. She decides to toss a coin to make the decision. However, it ends up landing at the CEO, Stella's feet. Miss Stella then shares a story about her own decision-making process, during which she faced a lot of scrutiny, but ended up making the right choice. Inspired by her words, Ling makes up her mind and asks Mr. Jiang for a department transfer, but he outrightly refuses. Later at a gathering, Ling brings Huang Ji a signed photo of a famous animator. The latter is overjoyed by the gift, and she reveals that Mr. Jiang had tried to invite this animator multiple times, but without success. Ling then realizes that she can leverage this to her advantage. She helps Mr. Jiang secure a collaboration with the animator and successfully manages to persuade him to transfer her to the 9th Business Department. In the next scene, she packs up her belongings and heads to her new department, where she is welcomed by Gu Xun with open arms. She starts blushing, assuming that he's about to hug her, but to her surprise, he only offers to help her carry her box. Meanwhile, Su Jiang is excited about Ling joining the 9th Business Department, so he spends the entire day preparing gifts and choosing photos for a welcoming party. Later that day, there's a competition to win the best booth for the game show. The CEO, Stella, decides to look at the works of the 9th Business Unit and Unit 1 and determine the winner the following day. Because of this, the rivalry between Mr. Jiang and Gu Xun reignites. When Ling returns home that night, she finds her door lock is broken. Sadly, she's left her ID card inside, so she can't even stay at a hotel either. With no other choice, she turns to Gu Xun for help. He lets her stay at his place, where she notices women's slippers, cups, and pillows. Turns out Gu Xun had been well prepared for her arrival. While watching a horror movie together, he tries to comfort Ling by putting his arm around her. However, she feels awkward by his behavior, so he promptly pulls away. The next day at the office, he notices Ling and Su Jiang laughing together. Filled with jealousy, he later meets her in the tea room and assures her that she can talk to him about anything. Ling realizes that he's acting out of jealousy, and this kind of makes her happy. Later, while discussing work with colleagues, Ling's mother unexpectedly calls her and asks her to attend a talk show. It's a couple's ticket bought specially for her. Ling doesn't want to go on a blind date, and she bluntly refuses. However, when her mom mentions that the date is none other than Gu Xun, she changes her mind quickly. She gets excited for the date and dresses up prettily. At the same time, Gu Xun gets a call from his mother, who sets up a meeting with a girl, but he straightforwardly declines, claiming that he's busy at work. Later, he watches their promotional video and is impressed by its highlights. He then considers adding interactive functions. After finishing up work, he decides to leave early and sees a memo on Ling's seat about the talk show performance that night. At that moment, he realizes that she might be his date, so he confirms with his mother. Meanwhile, Ling waits at the theater entrance, hesitant to call Gu Xun, as she doesn't want to seem too eager. When the show begins and no one arrives, she wonders if she's being stood up. Elsewhere, Gu Xun is stuck in traffic. He checks the time and realizes the performance has already begun. He anxiously calls Ling, but her phone is off. This leaves him with no choice but to wait downstairs in their apartment building. After an hour, he finally spots Ling returning and rushes to greet her, but she's too angry to pay attention. Gu Xun then follows her inside and hopes for a chance to explain. Meanwhile, Ling remembers the broken lock and tries to call a locksmith, but her phone is dead. She then hesitantly borrows a power bank from Gu Xun and calls for help. The locksmith, sensing her urgency, demands a higher price. Ling is hesitant about it, but she changes her mind when she sees Gu Xun and agrees to any cost if it means getting inside. The locksmith arrives shortly after and mistakes Gu Xun as her boyfriend. He then ushers the pair inside the apartment and gets to work from outside. He soon gets the job done and leaves, but when Ling tries to unlock the door from inside, it jams again. As a result, she gets stuck with Gu Xun inside the apartment. Frustrated, she asks him to turn away so that she can try and fix the lock. But as soon as he tries to turn, he slips on a magazine and kneels in front of her. She believes he's trying to apologize to her, which softens her anger. Gu Xun then clarifies the situation, explaining that he didn't know she was his blind date. Hearing this, Ling finally forgives him and asks him to return to his apartment. But when he tries to leave, they realize the door is still locked. Left with no other choice, Ling agrees to let him stay at her place. He then asks for a change of clothes, and she says he can find them in the closet. While going through it, he stumbles upon a sketch of himself that Ling had drawn. It reminds him of her confession, and he regrets turning her down. The following morning, the locksmith finally arrives outside the door and fixes the broken lock. Later at work, Gu Xun requests a 5-day delay in releasing the promotional video. This causes him to face objections from the directors. However, he believes in creating a better video and is willing to face the consequences. Ling notices his stress and tries to lighten the mood by telling him jokes and offering hugs. She also checks on him when he has a headache. The next day when the pair arrives at the company, they learn from a colleague that the exhibition booth has been assigned to Unit 1. Gu Xun assures his team not to worry and promises to sort it out. He confronts the boss Stella about allocating the booth to Unit 1 before their promotional video is even released. Mr. Jiang then informs him that his project team has released 4 character drawings, and the response is surprisingly positive. He had preloaded the game, which resulted in a strong cash flow. Determined to retaliate, Gu Xun shares his promotional video with the planning department. To his good fortune, Stella is impressed, and the 9th Business Department successfully secures the exhibition hall. The promotional event soon takes place in the hall, where various gaming characters are set up. After the event, Ling takes a love test which predicts that someone will confess their feelings for her within 3 days. Hearing this, both Gu Xun and Su Jiang become competitive with each other. On her way home, Ling wonders if Gu Xun is planning to confess to her. She spots flowers and candles ahead and assumes it's him, but she's surprised to find Su Jiang instead. Gu Xun sees them hugging from afar and mistakenly believes that she accepted his proposal. The following day at work, Junan is checking his horoscopes on his phone. He then informs Gu Xun that it's an auspicious day for confessions. That night, our hero insists on ordering takeout and asks Ling to head up to the apartment first while he buys something. She soon reaches his door, thinking it's already so obvious that he's about to confess. Downstairs, Gu Xun plans to control the lights in the room with his phone. But as he's about to initiate his plan, he receives a call from Junan and learns some bad news. In the meantime, Ling enters his apartment and expects to be showered with love. Sadly, nothing interesting happens and she realizes that she guessed wrong. Just then, Gu Xun calls and informs her that there's a legal issue with their project and he needs to return to the company. When he returns home, he finds Ling at her door and she asks if he resolved the issue. He sadly admits that he hasn't, emphasizing the importance of the matter. Seeing him so worked up, Ling hugs him, assuring that she'll always be by his side. Later, Gu Xun reveals that he and his father created the character Shaolin together for the project, but he somehow got into a copyright issue for the same character. Seeing the manuscript they worked on, Ling wonders why his father can't testify. Our hero then sadly reveals that his father passed away long ago. Ling apologizes to him and suspects that the copyright document is forged. She then wonders who would intentionally frame them. The next day during a board meeting, the proposal to sell Hero's Path and dissolve the 9th Division surfaces. However, Gu Xun strictly opposes it. He asks for the time to resolve the issue. He then texts Ling, informing her that he will go on a business trip to his hometown for a few days. When she's unable to reach him by phone, she becomes anxious and seeks help from their online buddy, Luo Tuo. He reassures her that Gu Xun often retreats to his hometown in tough times. However, he also mentions that this time, Gu Xun's behavior seems abnormal and he hasn't contacted him upon returning home. Concerned, she asks him to send her the address. In the following scene, Ling drives through the night to reach Gu Xun's hometown. When she finally spots him in an alleyway, she gets into a heated argument with him. He apologizes to her and confesses that he likes her a lot, both as his childhood crush and as the person she is now. He further reveals that he planned to tell her the night before and had even prepared star lanterns, but he didn't get the chance. Curious about the depth of his feelings, Ling asks how much he likes her. Gu Xun admits that it's hard to quantify, but assures her that she's been his only love since childhood. They then share that they're each other's first loves, and with that realization, they embrace each other happily. Later, they head to Gu Xun's father's studio to try to find anything that could save their project. They search every nook and corner inside the room, but fail to find anything. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Gu Xun suddenly remembers Uncle Guo, who is his father's former business partner and Luo Tuo's father. The scene then shifts to Luo Tuo's home, where the couple searches for clues on his dad's computer. They also ask the uncle about whether his father sold the copyright, but the latter's unsure. While returning, Ling feels that they're being overly polite to each other. Therefore, he decides to break the ice by unexpectedly kissing her. The couple then arrive at a hotel where they request 2 rooms. They later try to access Gushun's father's personal computer, but it's protected by a strict password. Our hero then enters the year when C programming was launched and successfully unlocks the computer. He explains to Ling that his father was obsessed with programming. While going through the files, they realize they don't have the copyright for the Shaolin character. In fact, his father had already sold it to some other company. When Ling asks what he plans to do next, Gushun decides to give up on the character to save the 9th Division. He's upset and wonders how his father could sell something so important. Just then, Ling notices an application on the computer screen and asks him about it. He reveals that it's the same software he often used to chat with her father. As Gushun logs in, he discovers numerous messages left by his father before his passing. Touched, he reads every single one of them with tears in his eyes. The next day, the company's board of directors revisits the idea of selling Hero's Path, but Stella mentions that Gushun promised a solution today. Just in time, he arrives with the document and distributes copies to everyone. When asked about its contents, Gushun reveals that it's evidence of copyright ownership. Turns out that his father terminated his contract with the company after realizing they didn't value his contributions. He further states that the characters are solely Gushun's father's creation. The directors are impressed, and they withdraw their decision to sell the project. Later, when Ling brings documents to Gushun's office, she finds him asleep. She covers him with his jacket and gazes at his face. Unexpectedly, he awakens and pulls her closer. They then draw closer to kiss, but a colleague enters the room, ruining the moment. A few days later, Ling finds a yellow mug in the tea room, and he appears with a black one. Turns out the mug is a couple's mug that Gushun bought, and he asks Ling to make coffee with it. They then hold hands in the tea room and exchange loving looks. One evening, the couple is cooking dinner together when Junon suddenly opens the door and enters the apartment. Seeing him, Ling quickly squats down, but he's already noticed her. Junon then deliberately asks if it was appropriate for Ling to stay over this late. Just as she's about to leave, Gushun takes her hand and announces that they're together. This makes Junon smile, and he says that he was already aware of it. The next day at work, Ling is compelled to reveal her relationship to Huang Ji, but the latter admits she already knew about them when she spotted them in the cafe. Later, she gives Ling a negligee as a congratulatory gift. That night, our heroine puts on the negligee and gets ready for bed. Just then, she receives a call from her team leader asking for a file to be sent. Ling's laptop has recently malfunctioned, so she calls Gushun, who's working late at the office. She asks if she can borrow his laptop to complete her assignment. He gladly agrees and assures her that he'll be home soon. Later, as Ling is working on the files, Gushun's mother unexpectedly enters the apartment. Our heroine is anxious about meeting her for the first time, albeit in such attire. However, she becomes pleasantly surprised when Mom compliments her outfit, even going as far as to say that she wants one herself. Just then, Gushun arrives at the apartment and he's delighted to see his mother. They greet each other warmly and prepare for dinner. However, the pleasant atmosphere soon changes when Mom finds his gaming equipment. Turns out that Gushun has been lying to his mother about his profession. She hated gaming ever since his father died due to the same reason. It's revealed that his father worked excessive overtime hours for his gaming projects and sadly succumbed to a heart attack. Mom expresses concern as she doesn't want him to follow in his father's path. She gives him an ultimatum, choose between her or the game, before stomping out of the room. The next morning, he confronts his mom and says that if she doesn't want him to pursue gaming, then he will oblige her. But he asks her to look at a document first. He then reveals Shaolin is the game character his father created based on him. His mother burst into tears after reading the whole manuscript, which is based on their real-life story. She understands that he wants to pursue gaming, but she doesn't want him to end up like his father, who died from exhaustion due to overworking. Our hero tries to explain, but his mother says that she can't control him anymore now that he's grown up, and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Stella's shareholders are considering selling their shares to a rival company named Walter Games. One of the shareholders, Zhao, is unsure, but Director Wong claims that Stella is clearly in turmoil. Later, Walter's officials arrive at HC Games and tell Stella that they want to acquire her shares. They also reveal that Director Wong, who holds 30% of the shares, has already decided to sell. When Gushun learns of this, he plans to offer Hero's Path to the rival company. However, this decision comes off as a surprise to the employees of the 9th Business Department. Ling is distraught with him for offering his father's work to another company instead of diligently working to launch their game independently. That night, Ling and Chen are in a bad mood, so they go to a bar to have a drink. Our heroine gets so drunk that she can't even open the door to her house. When Gushun hears her yelling outside the door, he hurries out. Ling sees him and asks why he made her unhappy. In her drunk state, she complains that he smells utterly bad. Hearing this, he sprays himself with cologne and asks her to smell again. Ling gets close to him as if to kiss him, but she falls down, so he carries her off to bed. The next morning, she wakes up and sees him sleeping on the sofa. At this moment, she realizes that she needs to treat him better. Later, she goes to a restaurant for lunch and coincidentally encounters Walter's associates with Director Wong. She becomes eager to eavesdrop, so she leans closer to them. Ling realizes that if Gushun doesn't go with the plan of Walter Games, they will crush his game launch. Upon returning home, she demands that Gushun kneel down and apologize to her because he lied to her about selling the hero's path. He responds by kneeling down and spelling out love on the keyboard for her. Annoyed, she reminds him that he still needs to discuss business. She then shares what she overheard earlier about them wanting to destroy his project if he disobeys their plan. Our hero reveals that he's already aware of this and has discussed it with Stella to persuade the shareholders against selling their shares. Despite his efforts, Ling hasn't forgiven him yet and insists he keep kneeling. He then playfully pushes her onto the sofa and tickles her until they reconcile. The following day during a meeting, the people from Walter Groups urge Director Wong to sign a paper and transfer his shares to them. But before he can do so, Junon arrives with a better offer from a new investor named Mr. Liu. If Director Wong keeps his share intact, he'll be offered dividend much higher than what he has promised to receive in Walter Games. The director cunningly analyzes his investment and decides to give all his shares to Mr. Liu instead. Following this, Gushun's Hero's Path project secures attractive investment. The company rejoices with the news, and Stella plans a celebration for later. As New Year approaches, Ling prepares to go home for the holidays. Gushun is upset because she doesn't want him to accompany her. Our heroine explains that it's too early for her to introduce him to her parents. She then promises to invite him next time. But just a few days later, Gushun can no longer bear the separation, so he visits Ling in her hometown. He meets her parents for the first time and impressively handles all the tests they throw at him. Dad shares some of his daughter's habits and asks him to take good care of her. Both of them seem to be genuinely impressed by him. Fast forward to a year later, our two celebrate their engagement and send wedding invitations to their colleagues. Additionally, we learn that Hero's Path's sales have exceeded 10 million, fulfilling Gushun's dreams of establishing a successful triple-star company. The show ends with the two holding hands as they look out the office window and happily anticipate spending the rest of their lives together.